5 years of maintaining a low profile. What has the once finance minister in the Kibaki government been up to?
I enrolled into my MBA class. I enrolled into my doctorate class. So I've used that time very productively in enriching my knowledge. I found out there's more life outside politics. And you get to know the real, what does the real Mwananchi think? What does the real student think? What else? Because politics, you get things sifted in a way, especially when at the levels we are serving, you receive information almost in a structured way. You never get to know the truth of really what's on the ground. But now, operating incognito, I've been able to actually get a feel of the common man.
Let us reflect a bit about your time in government. You were referred as the blue-eyed boy of Kibaki, and it is even said when he was unwell, you were part of a smaller team that took charge of the government. Why are you that powerful?
I wouldn't call it powerful. We were very committed to seeing the President Kibaki succeed. Basically, the whole cabinet was in charge. Some of us may have done a little more than the others. But he was always in charge. That's one thing about him. He probably didn't talk much. He didn't, was not as active as people would have wished him to be. But nobody ever did anything without his final say.
Let us talk about the circumstances you left office or your departure from government. The controversial sale of the Grand Regency Hotel at 18 million euros that caused your downfall. And you famously said, "I'd rather die than resign." Aren't you glad that you're still alive?
Yes, well, I think people didn't quite understand I wouldn't call it just simile, it's more of a saying, yeah? And there's some songs that say, "I would rather die than lose my love," So I picked it from there. My only involvement in that matter was, as Minister for Finance, I was the spokesman for Central Bank in Parliament. So when the question was raised in Parliament, Central Bank would not come and answer. I had to give the answer. And because there was lots of pressure from different circles to get me out of Treasury, because they thought I was holding tightly to the kitty, and people were not accessing it, and people, thought, this guy is getting too powerful, we need to bring him down to size. I remember at that point I just read in the budget and introduced taxation of MPs. At some point I was feeling very strongly that, why am I being hunted for something I've not done? And everyone's saying you should resign because you've done it. Resigning was going to admit that you're actually guilty. The full wording was, "I would rather die than resign, but I'm prepared to give way for an independent investigation to prove I'm right." Perhaps I should have used some different wording, because they gave people I'm so desperate.
So you didn't make any money out of the Grand Regency sale?
Central Bank of Kenya selling to the Libyan government, where is room for anyone to make money? There was no brokers involved. And suddenly for me, from Treasury, we didn't even need to approve. We didn't need to do anything except to report to Parliament. The whole deal was concluded between the two institutions.
Grand Regency clearly is not the last scandals Kenyans have heard of. What is your position on corruption? Should suspects be allowed to vie for public office?
It's only after investigation and completion of the whole due process that you can say somebody is corrupt or not. Unfortunately, in this country, everyone is labeled. If I disagree with you now, I will, rush at the first thing is to say so-and-so is corrupt, okay? Because once you're labeled, people start seeing that tag. But, and we have a very slow judicial process that to untag you from that tag could take forever. So, and a lie repeated so many times then becomes the truth. So my stance on this matter is, when people have gone through due process and have been found to have been guilty, yes, I believe they should not then be allowed near the publicity.
During your impeachment in Parliament, not a single minister then supported you. Is it true that they found it difficult to work with you, and they also found you rather arrogant?
I wasn't arrogant. I was probably removed from people. I kind of behaved the typical accountant. You believe on a cause, it's the right thing to do, and you're prepared to do anything to get your way, rather than to bend over backwards and persuade people to come along with you. Accountants are usually not very patient, but since then I've learned the virtues of patience, The virtues of humility, you know, it's like even if you have to explain something to somebody for 10 times until they understand, you don't give up on the second attempt.
And now you're making a political comeback by eyeing a seat which you held for 10 years, MP Kibaki. Why MP?
We've lost out on Parliament. And if some of us who have the experience don't get into Parliament, then we could end up losing the luster of Parliament and making it almost like, you know, it's a place for anyone who can get votes out there, gets in, not necessarily for the national good. Remember, it's a national assembly. Not for the national good, but for their personal gratification, that have now an MP. And we will all suffer in the long term.
Don't you think it's a downgrade for Kimunya, one who was seen as a potential successor to Kibaki?
At times you might have to humble yourself to enable the better contribution to the national debate, the national agenda. And since we cannot all be presidents, we cannot all be deputy presidents, then we look at what is the next best opportunity to serve the country. And I do consider the National Assembly as a fitting position. And
there are those who claim that Kimunya, being a Kibaki orphan, is being a coward by going for the parliamentary seat. And they say, and I'll quote them, they say Kimunya has chosen to act like a cheetah or a leopard, which leaves the forest where they can easily kill antelopes to compete for rats with domestic cats. End of quote.
Yes. Going back to governor is actually going back to, it's going a bit too low. It's such a small seat, but because it was over-glorified by being said His Excellency, First Lady of the county, you know, a flag for the county, you know, all those things which have cost the taxpayers a lot of money. And that glorification of a title, which was being held by the chairman of the council or the mayor, okay? And that's where it should have settled. And what I've been asking them, if you think the governor is a bigger seat, go for it. Let Kimunya go for what may be seen as small, but its contribution at the national level is so immense.
In the last general election, you lost to the current MP, Samuel Kamunyi, and at that point you actually wrote a letter to your constituents calling them a thankless lot. Was that necessary, and why did you do that?
Good that you brought that point. First of all, I lost to one of my campaign team members, and one of the guys I'd brought in to work with me within the CDF. I'd even given the chairmanship of the water portfolio. I felt it was total betrayal for somebody to come up from inside, not necessarily to express his ambitions to run for the same position, but to use inside information and then misinform people on it, and because they would believe him because he's an insider. In terms of that's the said letter, I'm yet to see the letter. Where is this letter? Who did I address it to? Because I cannot do a letter to Kibakirians. Yeah? I only wrote one letter to the returning officer for Kibaki to concede defeat. I only put a rider that I'm however disappointed that my development efforts did not translate into the voting patterns. Not even the votes, the voting patterns. Because some of the areas that had distilled out of development turned against, okay? And I thanked them and I said, you know, that was it.
You were in the last parliament when it was small, tight institution of only 222 MPs. Now it is bloated with over 400 MPs. As a former finance minister, what do you think of this growth?
I warned about it when I was Minister for Finance. I knew the costs was going to be enormous. But people said, let's try it out, we'll see. Now we've tried, but should we be using the money to pay MCA so much, to pay members of parliament so much, you know, to maintain those structures as they are, or should we be using that money to create jobs for the youth? Do we need to continue experimenting into the next decade, or is it time that we now said, let's think around with some of these issues, reduce the number of the amount of representation? We created all these commissions because people could not trust the executive. That's why the commissions were created. Yeah? Do we need them? Should that now be part of the responsibilities within the county governments and within the national executive? And
have you been able to follow debates in parliament? What do you think of their quality?
One day you might feel, yes, there's good debate going on, there's some, you know, inspiring debate, even within the committees. But on the whole, there's a lot to be done. And again, it's again perhaps more institutional than personal. With 350 MPs, when will they all get a chance to contribute? What I would want to do is to go and help Kenya bake a bigger cake in the National Assembly.
So are you using this as a stepping stone to something else?
Who knows? Yeah? Might, you know, who knows? We might either end up working towards how do we fit into the next government under, you know, the Deputy President.